complete story from $30 to everything. Part 1, The Fall. The sound of the deadbolt sliding into place hit me like a gunshot at 11:47 p.m. on a cold Tuesday in October. I stood on the front porch steps staring at the peeling paint on the door that had just closed behind me, and for a moment my brain refused to process what had happened. Carl had actually done it. He'd kicked me out. My backpack hung from one shoulder stuffed with everything I'd managed to grab in the 15 minutes he'd given me. 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, the leather notebook my mom had given me before the cancer took her 8 months ago, a phone charger, some socks. That was it. That was everything I owned at 17 years old. In my right hand, I clutched $30 in cash, a 20 and a 10. I'd counted it 4 times already, standing there on the porch like somehow the bills might multiply if I just checked one more time. They didn't. The October night wrapped around me unseasonably cold for California, and I started walking because standing still felt like admitting defeat. My sneakers scraped against the sidewalk, the sound echoing in the empty residential street. Most of the houses had their lights off. Normal people were asleep. Normal people had homes. I wasn't normal anymore. The words Carl had said kept playing in my head like a broken record. I loved your mother, Marcus, but she's gone. And every time I look at you, all I see is what I lost. I can't do this anymore. You're almost 18. You'll figure something out. Translation: you're not my real son, and I'm done pretending. I'd wanted to scream at him, wanted to remind him that I'd dropped out of school to take care of mom when she got too weak to climb stairs, that I'd held her hand through the worst of the chemo while he worked double shifts because he couldn't handle watching her fade, that she'd made him promise to look after me. But I hadn't said any of that. I just packed my bag and left because arguing with a drunk man who'd made up his mind was pointless. My feet carried me toward downtown without conscious decision. The bus station seemed like the only logical destination, the only place that would be open at midnight where I could sit without someone asking questions. The Greyhound terminal squatted on the corner of 5th and Market like a concrete toad, its fluorescent lights spilling onto the sidewalk in harsh white pools. I pushed through the doors and immediately felt the temperature change, the overheated air inside mixing with the smell of industrial, cleaner, stale coffee and human desperation. A handful of people scattered across the plastic chairs. A woman with 3 kids sleeping across her lap. An old man with his possessions and grocery bags at his feet. A couple of younger guys who might have been traveling, or might have been like me, living in the margins where traveling and homeless started to blur together. I found an empty section near the back wall away from the ticket counter and the bathrooms and dropped into a seat. The plastic was cold and hard. I'd be feeling it in my back by morning. I pulled out my phone. 8% battery. No missed calls, not that I expected any. No texts. The home screen showed a picture of me and mom from 2 years ago before the diagnosis, both of us laughing at something I couldn't remember anymore. I turned the phone off to save power and pulled out the notebook instead. Mom had carried this thing everywhere for as long as I could remember. Brown leather worn soft at the edges, filled with her handwriting. Lists and notes and little observations about life. After she died, I'd kept it in my backpack like a talisman, something to hold on to when everything else was falling apart. I flipped through the pages slowly. Grocery lists from 3 years ago, appointment reminders for doctors I'd never see again. Medication schedules written in her careful slanted handwriting. Notes about what to make for dinner, which bills needed paying, mundane details of a life that had seemed so permanent and turned out to be so fragile. Near the back, I found the page that had always confused me. Just 3 lines written in blue ink, no context or explanation. 114247319. I'd asked her about it once, maybe a month before she died. She'd been having a rare good day, lucid and present, instead of lost in the fog of pain medication. What are these numbers, Mom? She'd looked at the page for a long moment, then smiled that faraway smile that meant she was remembering something. Sometimes the most valuable things are hidden where people stop looking, baby. You'll understand when you need to. I'd wanted to ask more, but she drifted off to sleep before I could. And then a week later, she'd stopped having good days at all. And 3 weeks after that, she was gone. Now I stared at those numbers and wondered what she'd meant. Passwords, lock combinations, phone numbers with the area codes missing, or just random scribblings from a mind fighting through medication and pain. I didn't have answers. I had $30 and a backpack and nowhere to sleep. I must have dozed off because the next thing I knew, someone was shaking my shoulder and harsh light was burning through my eyelids. "Hey kid, you buying a ticket or what?" I jerked awake to find a security guard standing over me, middle-aged guy, with the kind of tired eyes that said he'd seen this scene 1,000 times. The clock on the wall showed 6:15 a.m. I'd slept for over 6 hours. "Sorry, I trailed off because I didn't know how to finish that sentence. "You got somewhere to be." His voice was firm but not unkind. "Yeah, I'm leaving." I grabbed my backpack and stood too fast, my neck protesting from the awkward angle I'd been sleeping at. Outside, the sun was just starting to brighten the eastern sky. The temperature had dropped during the night. I could see my breath. My stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't eaten since lunch yesterday. I walked 3 blocks to a 7-Eleven and stood in front of the cooler doing math. A pre-made sandwich was $4.89. A package of beef jerky was $6.99. Crackers with peanut butter were $2.79. A bottle of water was $1.59. I grabbed the crackers and water, $4.38 with tax. I handed over the 10, got back $5.62, and walked outside to eat, standing in the parking lot. The crackers tasted like cardboard and chemicals, but I ate them slowly, making them last. People drove past, people with jobs to get to homes, to return to lives that made sense. I tried not to feel sorry for myself. Self-pity was a luxury I couldn't afford. With $25.62 left, I needed a plan. But the only plan I could think of was survive today, then survive tomorrow, then survive the day after that. I walked to the public library when it opened at 9. The librarian, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, didn't ask why a teenager was there on a Wednesday morning when he should be in school. She just smiled and went back to her computer. I found a table near the back and plugged my phone into an outlet beneath it. While it charged, I opened Mom's notebook again and stared at those numbers. On impulse, I pulled over one of the library's public computers and typed 114 into Google. The results were useless: area codes, highway numbers, random articles about things I didn't care about. I tried storage unit 114 just to see what would happen. The search results were a mix of facility websites and articles about storage auctions. I clicked on one of the articles without much interest, just something to read to keep my mind off the gnawing anxiety in my chest. The article was about people who made money buying abandoned storage units and reselling the contents. Some guy in Texas had found a unit full of vintage comic books worth $50,000. A woman in Florida discovered antique furniture that sold for 20 grand. It seemed too good to be true, like those late-night TV shows where everyone gets rich selling houses or flipping cars. But I kept reading because I had nothing else to do. I spent the next 3 hours falling down a rabbit hole of storage auction videos on YouTube. Most of what people found was junk, broken furniture, moldy boxes, random kitchen appliances nobody wanted. But occasionally someone would cut open a lock and find something valuable. Jewelry, collectibles, tools, weird random treasures hidden in forgotten spaces. I watched one video where a guy spent $50 on a unit that looked completely empty, except for some cardboard boxes. Inside those boxes were vintage vinyl records, original pressings from the 60s, which he sold to collectors for $3,000. $50 into $3,000. Not bad odds if you knew what to look for. My stomach growled again around noon. I'd been so absorbed in the videos I'd lost track of time. I had $25.62. I needed to eat, but I also needed to make this money last. I walked to the community bulletin board near the library entrance looking for I don't know what. Job listings for teenagers with no address and no phone number. Miracles. The board was covered with the usual stuff: yoga classes, lost cats, roommates wanted, someone selling a used bicycle, someone else looking for a piano teacher. And then right in the middle, slightly off-center, and printed on plain white paper instead of colorful cardstock, I saw it: storage auction, cash only, unit 114 Saturday, 2 p.m. lockaway storage, 4500 Industrial Boulevard, unit 114. My hand went to my pocket where I'd stuffed the notebook and my heart started beating faster. It was a coincidence. Had to be. Numbers repeated all the time. It didn't mean anything. But my mother's voice echoed in my head. Sometimes the most valuable things are hidden where people stop looking. I pulled out my phone and typed the address into maps. Lockaway storage was 3.8 miles away. I could walk that in an hour if I had to. Saturday was 3 days away. I took a picture of the flyer and walked back to my table thinking, I had $25.62. If I spent $10 on the storage unit, assuming that was even enough to bid on one, I'd have $15.62 left. That was maybe 3 days of minimal food if I was careful. And if the unit was full of junk like most of them seemed to be, I'd have wasted money I couldn't afford to waste. But if there was something valuable inside, I spent the rest of the afternoon researching storage auctions, how they worked, what the laws were in California, what kinds of things to look for, what red flags to avoid. The basics were simple. When people stopped paying rent on their units, the facility auctioned off the contents. You could look inside from the doorway but couldn't enter until you won the bid. All sales were final, cash only. You had 72 hours to remove everything. Most professional buyers had trucks, teams, resale channels already established. They bought multiple units, sorted through everything, kept the valuable stuff, and trashed the rest. It was a volume game. I had $25.62 in a backpack. The library closed at 6. I walked to a McDonald's, bought a McDouble and small fries for $3.48, and ate slowly in a corner booth while the dinner rush swirled around me. When the manager started giving me looks around 9 p.m., I left and walked back to the Greyhound station. The same security guard was on duty. He saw me come in and our eyes met. Something unspoken passed between us, recognition maybe, or pity. He didn't tell me to leave. I found a different seat than before and pulled out my phone. 4% battery. I turned it off again and sat in the hard plastic chair, my backpack on my lap, and tried not to think about how I'd gone from having a home to living in a bus station in less than 24 hours. The next 2 days followed the same pattern. Wake up when the guard shook my shoulder around 6 a.m. Walk to 7-Eleven. Buy the cheapest food I could find. Spend the day in the library, learning everything I could about storage auctions, vintage items, collectibles, anything that might help me to spot value if I actually went through with this insane plan. By Friday night, I'd spent $7.14 on food. I had $18.48 left. I lay awake in the bus station Friday night, staring at the flickering fluorescent lights, and made my decision. Saturday morning, I walked to Lockaway Storage. The facility was in the industrial part of town, surrounded by warehouses and vacant lots. Chain-link fence, metal buildings stretching in rows. The kind of place where things went to be forgotten. About 20 people had gathered near Building C by the time I arrived at 1:45 p.m. They ranged from guys in their 20s with pickup trucks to older couples who looked like they'd been doing this for decades. Everyone had a certain energy about them, alert, calculating, assessing. I hung back, trying to be invisible, watching and learning. The auctioneer was a weathered guy in his 50s with a clipboard and a voice that carried. He explained the rules I'd already memorized, then started opening units. Unit 107 was packed, floor to ceiling. The bidding started at $50 and climbed to $185. A man in a cowboy hat won it with a satisfied nod. Unit 109 went for $60. Unit 112 for $95. Then they moved to Unit 114. The auctioneer rolled up the door, and I stepped forward with everyone else to look inside. The smell hit me first, mildew dust, something chemical and unpleasant. The unit was full, but not in a promising way. Water-stained boxes on the left, old cabinets against the back wall, plastic bins with cracked lids. Everything had that look of abandonment, of things left too long in a space nobody cared about. Someone behind me laughed. "That's a trash unit if I ever saw one." The auctioneer looked around. "Who wants to start the bidding?" "Let's say $40. Silence. 30. Nothing. 20. One of the older guys shook his head. "Mike, come on, that's all garbage." The auctioneer sighed. "Fine, $15. Somebody give me 15. People were already walking away toward the next unit. $10. I need at least 10 or we're padlocking it again. My hand moved before my brain could stop it. "I'll take it." Every head turned to look at me. The auctioneer seemed surprised. A couple of the regulars smiled, not mockingly, but with the kind of amusement you feel watching someone make an obvious mistake. "You sure, son? That's probably 90% junk in there." "I'm sure." "All right then, $10 going once." He paused. "Going twice." Another pause. Sold to the young man for $10. I walked over and handed him a $10 bill from my pocket. He gave me a receipt and a key to the padlock. 72 hours to clean it out, he reminded me. Yes, sir. The crowd moved on to Unit 115. I stood there with the key in my hand staring at what I just bought. I'd gambled a third of my remaining money on a storage unit full of trash because of three numbers in my mother's notebook. Either I was following a sign or I was losing my mind. I pulled the door halfway down to give myself some privacy and stepped inside. The smell was worse enclosed. I breathed through my mouth and started examining everything systematically. The water-damaged boxes were exactly what they looked like: ruined, moldy clothes, soggy paperwork, kitchen supplies with rust and corrosion. The cabinets were particle board worthless. The plastic bins contained old magazines, broken electronics, random junk. I worked through the unit for an hour, finding nothing of value. My hands got dirty, my eyes stung from the dust. My stomach churned with the growing certainty that I'd just wasted $10 I couldn't afford to waste. I sat down on one of the bins and put my head in my hands. Stupid. This was so stupid. I'd let grief and desperation make me believe in magical numbers and cosmic signs. My mother had been sick, probably just writing down random thoughts that meant nothing. I'd thrown away money I needed for food because I wanted to believe the universe cared about me. I stood up angry at myself and started pulling things out to see how much would fit in the dumpster outside. If I was stuck with this unit, I might as well clear it out. That's when I noticed the blankets piled in the back corner. They were bundled together, old quilts and comforters that looked like they'd been used as packing material. I pulled them aside to see what they had been protecting. Underneath, half hidden in shadow, was a metal box, black about the size of a shoebox, heavy when I picked it up. A three-digit combination lock on the front. My pulse quickened. I carried the box to the doorway where the light was better and examined it. The metal was scratched and dented, but the lock looked functional. I tried pulling it open. It didn't budge. A combination lock. 3 numbers. I pulled out my mother's notebook with shaking hands and flipped to the page with the numbers. 114. I turned the dial. 114. I pulled. Nothing. My heart sank. Of course, I'd been stupid to think, wait. I tried the second set of numbers. 247. I turned the dial carefully. 2, 4, 7. I pulled. The lock clicked open. For a moment, I just stared at it, not quite believing. Then I lifted the lid with trembling fingers. Inside, nestled in foam padding cut precisely to fit, were 6 watches. They gleamed in the afternoon light. Silver and gold, leather and metal bands, faces with Roman numerals and intricate dials. Even to my untrained eye, they looked expensive. They looked real. I lifted one out carefully. The weight of it felt substantial, solid. The face was cream-colored with elegant Roman numerals. The band was metal cool against my skin. On the back, tiny engraved words I couldn't quite read. I put it back gently and closed the box. My hands were shaking. My mother's numbers had led me here. To this unit. To this box. To these watches. It wasn't random. It couldn't be random. I locked the storage unit and walked 3 blocks to a pawn shop I'd noticed on the way to the facility. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Heritage Pawn occupied a corner building with barred windows. Inside, glass cases lined the walls displaying jewelry, electronics, guitars, and other items people had traded for cash. The air smelled like old leather and metal polish. Behind the counter sat an elderly man, late 60s or early 70s, completely bald, except for a neat white beard. Reading glasses perched on his nose as he worked on something with tiny tools. He looked up as I entered. "Help you." I approached the counter and set the metal box down carefully. My mouth was dry. I was hoping you could tell me about this. I opened the box and pulled out the watch I'd examined earlier. The man's expression changed immediately. He set down his tools and leaned forward at his focus sharpening. "May I?" "Yes, sir." He picked up the watch with the careful touch of someone who knows exactly what he's holding. He turned it over, examined the back, then reached under the counter for a jeweler's loop. For 2 full minutes, he studied the watch in silence. I barely breathed. Finally, he set it down gently and looked at me over his glasses. "Where did you get this?" His tone wasn't accusatory, just intensely curious, but I felt defensive anyway. "Storage auction, this morning. I have the receipt if you want to see it." He nodded slowly. "This is an Omega Seamaster. Late 1960s, I'd estimate around 1968. Original band, original face, excellent condition. He paused. This watch is worth approximately $1,200, possibly more to the right collector. $1,200, the number didn't seem real. I had $8.48 in my pocket. This single watch was worth $1,200. I have 5 more, I heard myself say. His eyebrows rose. May I see them? I nodded numb. He spent the next 15 minutes examining each watch, making small sounds of interest or surprise. When he finally looked up, his expression was unreadable. Do you understand what you have here? No, sir. Well, he arranged the watches in a row. You have one fake this Rolex, the serial number is wrong. But the others, he pointed to each. This Seiko is a Captain Willard model worth about $2,500. This Longines is vintage, probably $700 or $800. These two Timex are common, maybe $10 each. But this one, he picked up the last watch gold with a white face. This is either an extremely good fake or a genuine Patek Philippe Calatrava. If it's authentic, it could be worth $15,000 to $20,000. The floor seemed to tilt under my feet. $20,000. However, he continued, I'm not going to buy these from you today. My stomach dropped. Not because they're not valuable, he added quickly, but because you need to understand what you have before you sell it. You walk in here knowing nothing and someone less ethical could rob you blind. He reached under the counter and pulled out a thick, worn book. This is a collector's guide to vintage timepieces. Take it, study it. Come back in 3 days and tell me what you've learned. If you can do that, I'll help you sell these properly. I stared at the book, then at him. Why would you help me? He smiled slightly. 43 years ago, I was sleeping in my car with a box of my grandfather's old coins. A man named Samuel Brennan gave me the same chance I'm giving you now. He owned this shop before me. I'm just paying forward at what he did for me. He pushed the book across the counter. 3 days. Learn, then come back. Thank you, sir. I don't know what to say. Harold, he said. My name is Harold Brennan. What's yours, Marcus? Marcus Reeves. Well, Marcus Reeves, I'll see you in 3 days. And Marcus, he waited until I met his eyes. Keep that box safe. People have been killed for less. I walked out of Heritage Pawn with the book under my arm and $1,200 worth of watches in my backpack, and for the first time since Carl had kicked me out, I felt something other than despair. I felt possibility. Part 2, the grind. The library became my classroom, and survival became my curriculum. I claimed the same back corner table and opened Harold's book, Vintage Timepieces, a comprehensive collector's guide, with the intensity of someone studying for a final exam that would determine the rest of his life. Because that's exactly what this was. The book was dense with information, movement types, manufacturing periods, authentication markers, how to spot a fake crown, how caseback engravings varied by year and manufacturer, the difference between gold plating and solid gold construction. I read until my eyes burned, taking notes in the margins of my mother's notebook. Serial numbers mattered. Weight mattered. The font used for numerals could reveal authenticity. Even the way light reflected off the crystal could tell you if you were holding something genuine or a clever forgery. The Omega Seamaster, I learned, had been a cornerstone of dive watch design since 1948. Late 60s models in good condition held value because of their reliability and classic aesthetics. Harold's estimate of $1,200 seemed accurate based on recent auction prices. The Seiko Captain Willard, officially the 6105-8110, earned its nickname from Martin Sheen's character in Apocalypse Now. Collectors coveted them. $2,500 was actually conservative if the condition was as pristine as it appeared. The Patek Philippe, though, that was the wild card, the possibility, the watch that could change everything or turn out to be worthless. At 9:25 p.m., the librarian appeared at my table. We're closing, sweetie. I looked up disoriented. The library was empty around me. I'd been so absorbed I hadn't noticed everyone else leaving. Yes, ma'am. Sorry. Outside, the temperature had dropped into the low 40s. I zipped my hoodie and started walking toward the bus station, my breath forming clouds in the streetlight glow. I had $8.48. I needed to eat. I needed to sleep somewhere. And I needed to protect a box of watches that might be worth $30,000. I stopped at McDonald's and spent $2.19 on a McChicken. Sat in a corner booth and made it last 30 minutes chewing slowly, making every bite count. At the bus station, the security guard, I'd learned his name was James, nodded when I came in. You doing okay, kid? Working on it. What's your situation? You got family. Not anymore. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Listen, officially, I'm supposed to kick out anyone who's not buying a ticket. But unofficially, if you're here when I start my shift at 11 and you leave before 7 a.m., I don't see you sleeping. Understand? "Hmm, yes, sir. Thank you. And Marcus," I looked up, surprised he knew my name. "Whatever you're working on, I hope it works out." I spent the night reading Harold's book by the harsh fluorescent lights, my backpack clutched against my chest. I learned about complications and movements, about automatic versus manual winding, about the ways certain manufacturers sign their work in nearly invisible places. James woke me at 6:45 a.m. I thanked him and left walking to a different 7-Eleven where I bought a package of crackers for $1.89. $6.59 left. I spent Sunday the same way. Library until closing. Harold's book my constant companion. By evening, I'd read the entire thing cover to cover and started going back through sections cross-referencing with research on the library computers. I learned to check serial numbers against manufacturer databases. I found forums where collectors bought and sold. I discovered that the watch world operated as its own economy with rules and values completely disconnected from how well something told time. On Monday, I created a spreadsheet documenting everything I knew about each watch. The Omega authenticated by serial number and caseback design. Value estimate $1,100 to $1,300. The Seiko authentic based on case number and crown design. Value estimate $2,300 to $2,700. The Longines vintage 1940s pilot's watch, harder to verify without opening the case, but all visible elements match period examples. Value estimate $700 to $900. The two Timex Common 1980s models, minimal collector value, maybe $10 each. The Rolex definitively fake based on the serial number appearing in databases of known counterfeits. Value $0. The Patek Philippe, the question mark. The unknown variable. I spent 6 hours Monday afternoon researching just that one watch. Auction records, authentication guides, photographs of genuine Calatravas from various years. Patek Philippe was one of the most counterfeited brands because of their value, but also one of the hardest to fake convincingly because of their obsessive attention to detail. The watch I had showed promising signs, correct caseback style, proper dial font, appropriate crown markings. But without opening it to examine the movement without expert verification, certainty remained impossible. That uncertainty represented $15,000 to $20,000. On Tuesday at 2 p.m. exactly, I walked into Heritage Pawn. Harold was working on an antique pocket watch, his workspace covered with tiny tools and components. He looked up when the bell above the door chimed. "Marcus, right on time." I approached the counter and set down the metal box, then pulled out my notebook. "I did what you said. I studied them." "Show me." I walked him through my research. Serial number verification for the Omega. Forum discussions about Captain Willard values. Why the Rolex was fake and the Timex watch is worthless. Then I got to the Patek Philippe. "I can't authenticate this completely," I admitted. "I'd need to open the case and examine the movement, and I don't have the tools or knowledge to do that without risking damage. But based on external characteristics, it's either genuine or the best counterfeit I've seen in all my research." Harold nodded along as I spoke. When I finished, he held out his hand. "May I?" I gave him the Patek Philippe. He examined it with a different loupe than before, this one with an attached light. Minutes passed in silence. Finally, he set it down and looked at me. "You did excellent work, Marcus. Better than most people who've been in this business for years." He paused. "This Patek is genuine. I'm 95% certain. But you're correct that professional authentication is necessary, and that costs money. About $500 to send it to an authorized appraiser." $500? I had $6.59. Harold seemed to read my thoughts. "I have a proposition. You need money now, I'm guessing, and you need to learn more about this business. So here's my offer. Work for me for 2 weeks. Minimum wage is $12 an hour in this state. 40 hours a week comes to $480 before taxes, about $800 total. I'll advance you the $500 for authentication. You pay me back from your wages. While you're here, you learn the trade. After 2 weeks, if the Patek comes back authenticated, I'll help you sell it properly. I stared at him. Why? I told you, paying it forward. He extended his hand. Deal. I shook it. Yes, sir. Harold, and you would start tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp. I left Heritage Pawn with a job, a plan, and something I hadn't felt in days direction. That night, I spent $2.89 on food and $3 on a shower at a truck stop using their bathroom to wash my clothes in the sink and hang them to dry. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself, thinner, older, harder, but still standing. I showed up at 7:45 a.m. Wednesday morning. Harold was already there unlocking the door. Early, good sign. He handed me a key. Make a copy at the hardware store down the block. From now on, you open when I'm not here. The work was straightforward, but demanding. Harold taught me to test gold with acid solutions, how to identify hallmarks on silver, how to verify electronics actually functioned before pricing them, how to recognize stolen goods, the scratched serial numbers, the nervous sellers who couldn't maintain eye contact. We run an honest business, Harold explained. Someone comes in with obviously stolen property, we don't buy it. We don't profit from crime, clear? Yes, sir, Harold. Between customers, he taught me the economics of pawn shops, how loans worked, people bringing in valuables for cash, paying interest for 90 days, then either redeeming their items or letting them go to sale. How to balance fairness with sustainability. It's about relationships, he said. Mrs. Chen pawns her husband's coin collection every 2 months before rent is due. Every 2 months she redeems it. Been doing this 6 years. I could charge higher interest or offer less. But I don't because trust is worth more than short-term profit. I absorbed everything. Watched how Harold talked to customers, how he negotiated without making people feel cheated. Saw him turn away 3 different people, clearly trying to sell stolen goods, doing it firmly but without judgment. Friday of that first week, Harold handed me an envelope with $240 in cash. First 3 days, minus what I'm holding for authentication. I stared at the money, more than I'd held since Mom died. Thank you. You earned it. He paused. Marcus, you have somewhere to stay. I shook my head. He sighed. Thought so. He wrote on the back of a business card, boarding house 2 blocks from here. Woman named Dorothy runs it. Tell her I sent you, $60 a week, utilities included. Not fancy, but clean and safe. That night I moved into a room barely larger than a closet, but it had a bed, a desk, a window, a door that locked. I paid Dorothy $60 and had $180 left. Bought actual groceries for the first time in a week. Bread, peanut butter, apples. I sat on my bed eating a peanut butter sandwich and I cried. Not from sadness, but from relief so overwhelming it physically hurt. The second week, Harold taught me specifically about watches, how to open case backs without scratching them, how to identify movement types, how to spot water damage or amateur repairs. Watches are about craftsmanship, he explained. Thousands of tiny components working in perfect harmony. Some pieces took months to make by hand. That's what you're holding someone's life work. On Tuesday, the authentication report came back. Harold opened the envelope and read silently. Then he handed it to me. Authentic Patek Philippe Calatrava reference 3520 manufactured circa 1968 to 1970. Original dial, original case, original movement in working condition. Minor wear consistent with age. Estimated current market value $18,000 to $22,000, depending on sale method. I read it 3 times. The words didn't change. $18,000 minimum. Harold watched me with a slight smile. Congratulations, Marcus. You're a fortunate young man. But fortune felt theoretical. Just words on paper until it became actual money. How do I sell it? I asked. Carefully. He pulled out a laptop. 3 options. Private sale through collector forums, no commission but higher scam risk. Auction houses, 15 to 20% commission, but access to serious collectors. Or I connect you with a dealer in Boston who specializes in Patek Philippe. He'll offer less than full value, but guarantees safe, quick transaction. We researched for an hour. Private sales meant maximum profit, but maximum risk. Auctions reached the right buyers, but took significant cuts. The dealer offered certainty. What would you do? I asked. Harold thought carefully. At your age and your situation, go safe. Take the dealer route. You'll get 16 or 17,000 instead of 20, but you'll have it in a week with no scam risk. Once you're more established, take bigger risks. Right now, security matters more than maximum profit. Made sense. Can you contact him? Already did. Sent the report yesterday. He's interested. Wants photos, then he'll make an offer. We photographed the Patek from every angle using Harold's Lightbox. The watch looked beautiful, gold case, glowing white dial, pristine. 2 hours later, the dealer responded, $16,500 wire transfer as soon as Harold shipped with insurance. $16,500. I stood there staring at the screen, my knees weak. Marcus, Harold's voice seemed distant. You okay? Yeah, I couldn't finish. It's overwhelming, Harold said quietly. When Samuel sold my grandfather's coins, I got 12,000. Felt surreal. Felt wrong somehow, like I hadn't earned it. Did you, I asked. Earn it. I learned to, used it for business classes at community college, saved the rest. When Samuel retired, I bought this shop with that money as the down payment. He gestured around. So yes, I earned it, because I didn't waste it. The weight of his words settled over me. This wasn't just money. This was a choice about who I'd become. Accept the offer, I said. Let's do this right. Harold arranged everything. Wire transfer upon receipt and verification. Harold shipping with full insurance. Within a week, I'd have $16,500. In a bank account I didn't have yet. Tomorrow, Harold said, we open you an account. Can't carry that much cash. You need it in a bank, protected earning interest. That night in my room, I couldn't sleep. My mind spun with possibilities. $16,000. I could rent a real apartment, buy a car, go back to school, or waste it, burn through it in months and end up right back where I started. I pulled out my notebook and opened to a blank page, wrote at the top, plan for $16,500, then started calculating. Emergency fund, $10,000. Never touch except for real emergencies. Living expenses, $1,000 per month equals 6 months with the remaining $6,500. But 6 months wasn't enough. 6 months would pass, then what I thought about the storage unit, about the gamble that paid off, about Harold's words on learning the business. What if I didn't just sit on this money? What if I used it to make more? I revised $8,000 emergency fund, $4,000 investment fund for storage units, $4,000 living expenses, $500 GED, better, room to breathe and room to grow. Friday afternoon, Harold and I went to his bank. A patient officer walked me through opening my first checking account, explaining overdraft fees and minimum balances. You're 17, she noted. Need a co-signer. Harold nodded. I'll co-sign. We'll remove my name when he turns 18 in 4 months. Just like that, I had a bank account. The following Tuesday, Harold's phone rang. He listened, thanked whoever was calling, hung up. Dealer received the watch. Verified, authentic. Wire transfer processing. Should hit your account tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, $16,500. I felt numb. The number was too large to process. Wednesday at 8:47 a.m. I logged into my account and refreshed obsessively. Then the balance changed, $16,500. I stared at my phone for 5 solid minutes, making sure it was real. I'd done it. Taken $10 and turned it into this. Followed my mother's numbers to a storage unit everyone else dismissed as garbage. Learned. Worked. Trusted the right person at the right moment. I sat on my bed and let myself feel the magnitude. 2 weeks ago, homeless and hopeless. Now more money than I'd imagined, having a job teaching me a trade, a plan. But I knew this was just beginning. The money wouldn't last without smart choices. I needed more knowledge, more experience. I pulled out my notebook and looked at my plan. $8,000 emergency fund, $4,000 investment, $4,000 living expenses, $500 GED. As I studied it, something felt wrong. Too passive. About surviving, not building. I thought about whoever had owned those watches and lost them to auction. They'd had treasures and couldn't keep them. I didn't want to be someone who found treasure and lost it. I wanted to build something lasting. I revised one final time, $8,000 emergency fund savings account locked, $2,000 living expenses for 3 months, $6,000 investment fund for storage business, $500 GED, zero margin for error, but maximum chance to turn windfall into sustainability. I brought the plan to Harold the next morning. He studied my spreadsheet and nodded slowly. Solid plan, conservative enough to protect you, aggressive enough to grow. But you're missing something. What? Education. You learned about watches from a book, about pawn shops from working here. But if you're serious about storage auctions, you need to learn from professionals. Mentors plural. Make mistakes while you have cushion to absorb them. How? Show up. Go to every auction you can. Watch the pros. Ask questions. Learn by doing and failing. He pulled up something on his computer. Auction this Saturday. Bigger facility than Lockaway. More competitive. I'll go with you, introduce you to people who do this full time. After that, you're on your own, but you'll have foundation. Saturday came cold and rainy. Harold picked me up at 7 a.m. in his truck. The facility was massive parking lot filling with trucks and vans. Harold walked me through the crowd, pointing out regulars. Mike Chen does this 5 days a week, supports a family of 4. The Rodriguez couple specialize in furniture resale. Guy in the cowboy hat is Sam Dutton, 20 years experience, outbids people just to eliminate competition. I watched and absorbed. Saw how experienced buyers evaluated units in seconds, spotting value or worthlessness instantly. Saw when they pushed and when they walked away. First unit went for $400, Mike Chen won it. Second for $75, someone I didn't recognize. Third unit made my pulse quicken. In the back corner, partially visible, an ornate wooden dresser. Could be junk. Could be antique. Bidding started at 50, climbed fast. 100, 150, 200. I raised my hand. 225. Sam Dutton turned to look at me, smiled, raised his hand. 250. Harold leaned close. Walk away. He's baiting you. But I'd seen something artwork behind the dresser. I raised my hand. 300. Silence. 300 was serious money for uncertain contents. Sam looked at me long, then shrugged and stepped back. Sold for 300. My hands shook paying. I just spent 300 of my investment fund on a gamble. Harold and I spent 2 hours going through it. Dresser was particle board with vinyl veneer. Worthless. Boxes of old tax documents. Framed prints from a furniture store. But at the bottom of a stack wrapped in 1994 newspaper vintage vinyl records. Jazz. Original 50s and 60s pressings. Harold researched values. You might break even. Some worth 20 or 30 to collectors, but you're not profiting. This is a lesson about emotional bidding. He was right. After selling through forums, I made back $290. $10 loss plus time invested, but I'd learned what mistakes with real money felt like. That experience had value too. Over the next month, 14 auctions, 5 units purchased, 2 complete losses filled with trash costing money to dispose. 1 broke even. 1 small profit, $60 from vintage comics. 1 big win, Unit 319 antique cameras, $1,100 profit. I was learning the rhythms. How to evaluate quickly. Bid strategically. Cut losses fast. Which facilities had good units versus garbage storage. But I was burning through investment fund faster than planned. After 6 weeks down to $2,800 from $6,000. Made about $1,500 profit but spent $3,200 on units plus disposal storage transportation. At this rate, broke in 2 months. I brought my numbers to Harold. I'm making expensive mistakes, I said, running out of runway. He studied my spreadsheet. You're not making mistakes. You're paying for education. Question is, what are you learning? I thought. Most units are garbage. Need volume to make this work, but volume requires capital. I don't have. Professionals have trucks, teams, years of experience. I'm a kid with a backpack trying to compete. So what will you do? I don't know, that's why I'm here. Harold leaned back. 2 paths. Path 1, cut losses. Put remaining funds in savings, work here until 18, then figure out next move. Safe. Smart. What most people would do. And path 2, double down and take what you've learned from failures and apply it. Stop buying random units. Specialize. Pick one thing, become expert, focus all attention on units that might contain that one thing. He paused. What made you the most profit? The watches and the cameras. There's your answer. Watches, cameras, vintage collectibles. Small items, high value density, easier to transport and store. Stop bidding on furniture units. Stop chasing random boxes. Look for units that might have belonged to collectors, photographers, enthusiasts. Build expertise in specific markets. Perfect sense. Specialization. Focus. Playing to strengths. How do I find those units? Research. Facilities tell you rental duration. Long-term rentals, 10 years or more, belong to people using them for real storage, not temporary overflow. Those might have collections. Ask facility managers. Sometimes they'll hint at what kind of person rented a unit. I left with new strategy: specialize, focus, be strategic, not opportunistic. Next Saturday passed on 4 units. Too much furniture, too many garbage bags, too uncertain. Then unit 247 came up. Manager mentioned rented since 2004. 15 years. Renter passed away, family declined. Door open, plastic storage bins. Clear ones where you could partially see contents. In several bins, cameras, lenses, equipment cases. Bidding started at 200. I waited, climbed to 300, 400, 500. At 550, most dropped out. Just me and an older woman. She bid 600. I countered 625. She looked again, calculating, then stepped back. Sold for 625 coin, most I'd ever spent. Over 20% of remaining fund. If wrong done. Harold helped load bins in his truck, brought them to my small storage unit, 4 hours going through everything. Slowly, item by item, realized I'd called it right. Vintage Leica cameras, Nikon F-series, 60s and 70s lenses, complete darkroom setup, thousands of dollars of photography equipment, carefully stored, clearly loved. Over 3 weeks, working Harold's connections and online forums, sold for $8,200. Investment fund went from $2,200 to $8,900 in one transaction. I was learning, building something real. Part 3, rebirth. The camera equipment check cleared on a Thursday in late November, and standing in the bank watching the teller process it, I felt something beyond satisfaction. Vindication. Proof the strategy worked. That focus and patience could transform knowledge into profit. $8,900 in investment fund. $8,000 in emergency fund untouched. $2,200 in living expenses. I'd only spent $1,200 of the original $4,000. I'd turned $16,500 into $19,100 in 2 months. But more important than money, I'd built a system, a method, a way of seeing value others missed. Walking back to Heritage Pawn in cold November air, breath-forming clouds. Hands in pockets of the practical jacket I'd allowed myself when temperature dropped below freezing, I was learning the difference between need and want. Harold was helping an elderly man sell war medals when I entered. I waited, listening to Harold explain why he could only offer $200 for something the man clearly hoped was worth more. But he did it with respect, honesty, explaining the market and authentication difficulties. The man left disappointed but not angry. That was Harold's gift, delivering hard truths without destroying dignity. Good news, Harold asked when the door closed. Camera money cleared. $8,200, exactly as promised. Congratulations. Good find. You earned it. He paused. What's next? The question I'd been asking myself all week. I could keep doing auctions, building capital, learning. It was working, but something nagged at me, something unfinished. Unit 114, the first unit, my mother's numbers. I'd cleared everything valuable weeks ago. Watches sold, junk disposed of. I'd had 72 hours access, never went back after that first day. The facility sent a notice that remaining contents would be discarded. I'd ignored it, focused on new auctions and opportunities, but I kept thinking about the other numbers in Mom's notebook. 247, 319. I'd use 247 as the lockbox combination, but what if there was more? What if Unit 114 still held secrets? I need to check something, I told Harold. Can I borrow your truck? He tossed keys without questions. Another thing I'd learned from him, sometimes the most helpful thing is trusting someone to figure things out themselves. I drove to lockaway storage for the first time in nearly 2 months. Same rundown buildings and chain link fencing, but I felt different approaching now. Less desperate, more purposeful. The manager recognized me. You here to finally clean out 114, we're trashing it tomorrow. Yeah, here to finish. He gave me a building key and waved me through. Unit 114 sat in the same condition I'd left it. Boxes I'd rifled through, water-damaged furniture, mildew smell. It looked like failure, abandoned hope. But I'd learned something in 2 months of auctions. Don't just look at visible contents. Look at the space itself. How things are arranged reveals who owned them. I pulled everything into the hallway. Every box, every piece of furniture, every bag. Wanted to see empty space, the skeleton, without contents. That's when I noticed the back wall wasn't flush with neighboring units' back walls. A gap, maybe 6 inches. Not obvious, but enough to matter. I knocked on the back wall. Hollow sound. Heart rate increased. Examined more carefully. Not actually a wall. False back plywood sheet painted to match metal walls fitted carefully into place. Found the seam where it met floor and pulled. Plywood shifted, wedged, not nailed. Worked it free, set aside. Behind it carved from what should have been Unit 115's space wooden crate 3 feet long, 2 feet wide. Dragged it into light. Old. Dark wood. Metal straps. Padlock on hasp. Tried 247 combination. Nothing. Tried 319. Lock clicked to open. Inside, wrapped in yellowed cloth items, telling a story, leather journal thick and worn. Wooden box with intricate carvings. Envelope sealed with red wax. And underneath, wrapped individually, 4 more watches. I sat back staring. Not random storage. A time capsule. Message from whoever owned Unit 114, carefully hidden, meant for someone who looked carefully enough. Pulled out journal first. Leather soft with age. Pages filled with blue ink handwriting. First entry dated March 1991. My name is Thomas Hayes. Therapist says writing helps process grief. Wife left 6 months ago. Daughter Emma went with her. I have visitation every other weekend, but Emma barely speaks anymore. She's 8 years old and already knows I chose work over family. Maybe this journal will help me figure out how to fix it, or just be a record of failure. I flipped through, randomly reading entries across 3 decades. Thomas wrote about real estate investing, properties bought and sold, money made and lost. About Emma growing up in photographs from ex-wife, missed birthdays and school plays, growing distance. Entry from 1999. Emma graduates high school next week. Didn't invite me to ceremony. Her mother says she doesn't want me there. Sent a card with check for $5,000. Feels obscene trying to buy back time with money. But money is all I know to give. Entry from 2008. I'm 64, spent 40 years accumulating things, real estate, watches, coins, art, carefully acquired, meticulously maintained. Tell myself I'm a collector, but truth is simpler. Things don't leave. Things don't divorce you. Things don't tell you they're disappointed in who you've become. Entry from 2012. Market crash 4 years ago, lost almost everything. Properties underwater, retirement devastated. Perfect irony. Spent my life building wealth instead of relationships, now have neither. Tried calling Emma. Number disconnected. Don't know where she lives. Don't know if she's married or has children. Don't know anything about my own daughter except she's better off without me. Entries became less frequent after 2012. Shorter. Darker. Last entry dated November 2019. I'm dying. Liver cancer. 6 months, maybe less. Spent last week trying to find Emma. Called every Hayes in Portland. None or her. Maybe married and changed name. Maybe moved. Maybe erased me so completely I can't find her, even desperate to. Moving last valuable things to storage unit 114. If someone finds this, if you're reading this, one request. Find Emma Hayes. Born Portland, Oregon, 1983. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her watches and box are hers. Tell her I finally understand I confused treasure with purpose, wealth with worth. Tell her I loved her even if I didn't know how to show it. I sat in storage unit hallway with journal feeling weight of Thomas Hayes' entire life pressing down. A man who built an empire and lost everything that mattered. Who hid last possessions in storage like burial chamber, hoping someone would find them and finish the story he couldn't. Looked at envelope with red wax seal. Written in same handwriting for Emma. Didn't open it. Wasn't meant for me. Examined wooden box. Beautifully made intricate carvings depicting family tree. Inside wrapped in velvet antique coins. Morgan silver dollars, gold eagles from early 1900s, rare dates, good condition, probably worth several thousand. And the watches. Unwrap them carefully one by one. Audemars Piguet Royal Oak octagonal bezel, distinctive even to my trained eye. Vacheron Constantin in yellow gold. Jaeger LeCoultre Reverso with Art Deco face. Rolex Daytona with Paul Newman dial. Even without detailed authentication, I knew I was looking at a small fortune. 50,000, maybe more. Thomas Hayes' last treasures hidden behind false wall locked with his daughter's birth year. I sat there long thinking. The mercenary part, the part that had learned to evaluate and calculate, said these watches could change my life. 50,000 would give capital to really build a business. Invest seriously, secure future beyond doubt. But the other part, the part that read Thomas Hayes' journal and felt echo of his regrets, knew what I had to do. Find Emma Hayes. Back at my room, opened laptop and started searching. Emma Hayes, born 1983, Portland, Oregon. Hundreds of results, social media profiles, public records, professional listings, too many to sort manually. Narrowed Emma Hayes, Portland, age 42 to 43. Still dozens of results. Went to Heritage Pawn next morning and told Harold the whole story. Hidden crate, journal, Thomas Hayes' dying request. Harold listened without interrupting, then leaned back. So you want to find this woman and give her watches worth maybe $50,000, $60,000. It's not mine to keep. Legally it is. You bought the unit. Everything in it belongs to you. Legally isn't the same as morally. Harold smiled. No, it's not. Pulled out phone. No, a private investigator. Retired cop does background checks and people searches. Owes me a favor. Let me call. Investigator was Ray Castellano. Found Emma Hayes in 48 hours through methodical public records, searching cross-referencing addresses and relatives. Emma Hayes, 42, elementary school teacher, Portland, Oregon. Unmarried, no children, renting one-bedroom apartment in modest neighborhood. No social media beyond barely used Facebook. Ray gave me phone number and address. She doesn't know anyone's looking. Be gentle. People don't like strangers calling about dead parents. Tried calling 3 times before working up courage to let it ring. She answered cautiously. Hello, is this Emma Hayes? Who's asking? Marcus Reeves. Calls him from California. Found something that belonged to your father, Thomas Hayes. Silence. Then quietly, my father died 3 years ago. I know, I'm sorry. Found a storage unit he rented. Things inside he wanted you to have. More silence. I don't want anything from him. He left a letter, journal, items he wanted you to have. Paused. Can mail them if you prefer, but think he wanted someone to explain. Make sure you got them. Explain that he spent 50 years caring more about money than people already know that story. Voice hard, but underneath something more complicated. Not quite pain, not quite anger. Read his journal, I said. He knew. Spent last year's knowing what he'd lost. Didn't fix anything, but he knew. And that's supposed to make me feel better. No, supposed to make you feel nothing because it's too late to matter, but wanted you to have these anyway. I'd rather deliver in person. Make sure they get to you safely. Why do you care? Could keep them, sell them. What's it to you? Fair question. Thought about honest answer. 3 months ago, I had nothing. Sleeping in bus station with $30. Took chance on storage unit most people thought was garbage, found those watches. Gave me second chance. Think your father wanted them to give you something too. Not second chance maybe, but closure. Understanding. Know what it's like to lose a parent and wish you'd had more time. Know what it's like to inherit something you didn't ask for. So care because I understand. When she spoke again, voice softer. Okay, can come, but not promising anything. I'll look at letter, that's all. That's all I'm asking. Bought bus ticket to Portland for $230 leaving Friday. 18 hours with connections. Packed wooden box and journal carefully in backpack wrapped in layers of clothing. Envelope with letter in waterproof bag inside box. Harold gave weekend off and $40 for food. You're doing good thing, Marcus. Not many would. You would. Yeah, maybe that's why we get along. Bus ride long and uncomfortable, but didn't mind. Spent hours reading more of Thomas Hayes' journal, trying to understand the man who'd accumulated wealth and lost connection. seeing what lessons I could extract from his mistakes. Entry from 2009 stood out. Told myself I was building security. If I just made enough money, everything else would fall into place. But security isn't same as safety. Wealth isn't same as worth. Have million in assets and nobody who cares if I live or die. Secured nothing except isolation. Thought about my own journey. About 16,000 that felt like salvation. About business I was building, capital accumulating. Was I making same mistake, confusing money with meaning? Didn't think so. Money for me wasn't goal, was tool. Means to independence, choice, never being as vulnerable as that night Carl kicked me out. But Thomas Hayes probably told himself something similar in his 20s. Had reasons that made sense at the time. Difference maybe was awareness. I knew the trap existed, seen it in Thomas Hayes' story. That knowledge had to count for something. Portland, cold and raining Saturday afternoon. Checked into hostel for $25 per night, called Emma from coffee shop. I'm in Portland, can meet whenever convenient. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. coffee shop on Hawthorne called Cup and Saucer. I'll be there. Sunday afternoon, walked into Cup and Saucer 15 minutes early. Ordered coffee, barely touched. Sat by window, wooden box and backpack, watching people pass on rainy street. At exactly 2 p.m. woman walked in, matching Facebook photo. Tall, thin, dark hair and ponytail. Jeans and Portland State sweatshirt. Wary expression, expecting disappointment. I stood. Emma, she nodded, sat across from me without ordering. Pulled wooden box out, carefully set on table. This was hidden in your father's storage unit, along with his journal and this letter. Place sealed envelope on box. Her name in her father's handwriting. She stared without touching. How much is this stuff worth? Don't know exactly. Watch is probably 50 to 70,000. Coins, maybe 5 to 10. Haven't had everything authenticated. Eyes widened slightly. And you're just giving it to me. It's yours. He wanted you to have it. Why should I believe this isn't some scam? Open journal to last entry, slid across table. Read this. She read silently. Watched her face change, processing her father's words. Hardness didn't leave, but something else appeared alongside. Recognition, maybe. Or grief finally given permission. When finished, closed journal and pushed back. I don't want it. The journal, any of it. Watches Coin's letter. Don't want his apology or money or regrets. Built a life without him. Don't need anything now he's gone. Then don't keep for yourself, but read letter. You've spent 40 years wondering why he chose everything else over you. Maybe no good answer in there, but there's his answer. Don't you want to know? She looked at envelope long, then with shaking hands, broke wax seal and pulled out 2 handwritten pages. I looked away while she read, giving privacy. Watched rain on window and people passing by. Tried not to think about my own mother-owned collection of things left unsaid. When I looked back, Emma was crying silently. Tears running down, face letter still in hands. She read twice, then carefully folded and returned to envelope. When she spoke, voice thick with emotion. Says he's sorry, says understands he can't fix it, says spent whole life looking for something to make him feel whole, never realized it was supposed to be me. Wiped eyes. Says not asking forgiveness, just understanding. Says these things are mine because wants me to have security he never gave when it mattered. Do you want them? I asked gently. Don't know. Spent so long being angry at what he wasn't, what he never became. Now he's dead and can't even tell him how much it hurt. Looked at me. Why did you do this? Really could have kept all this. Thought about answer. Found my mother's notebook and backpack night my stepfather kicked me out. She'd been dead months, but having her handwriting, her thoughts kept me connected, helped me survive. Your father left you letter and journal and collection that mattered to him. Even if you don't want money, think you deserve the connection. Understanding. Closure. She nodded slowly. Okay, I'll take letter and journal, but don't want watches or coins. Emma, that's $70,000, maybe more. Don't care. Make $40,000 a year teaching a second grade. Have enough. Don't need his treasure. Don't want to build life on what he left behind. Understood the impulse, but thought about Thomas Hayes' words in journal, about wanting daughter to have security. What if you don't think of it as his treasure? Think of it as your time. $70,000 is almost 2 years teaching salary. That's 2 years you could tee off and travel. Go back to school. Write that book you always wanted. Or just have cushion so you're never one emergency away from disaster. Paused. He gave you money instead of time growing up. Don't refuse time now just because it comes from money. She considered, fingers tracing envelope edge. If I take it, I want you to have half. What? No. Half. You found it, tracked me down, got on bus, and came all way to Portland to give stranger her dead father's apology. That's worth something. Didn't do it for money. I know. That's why you deserve it. Pushed wooden box toward me. Sell everything, split down middle. If you don't, I'm not taking any of it. Standoff. Each trying to give others something they didn't think they deserved. Finally had idea. Different proposal. I'll sell everything, handle authentication. But instead of 50-50, you take 70%. I take 30. You invest your portion. Build cushion like I said. When you're ready, when you've processed this and figured out how you feel, do something with part of it that would make your father proud. Not his version of proud. Your version. Something representing who you are, not who he wanted you to be, she thought. And what will you do with 30%? Building business, buying storage units, and reselling valuable items. Use it as capital. To grow. Build something sustainable. So we both use his last treasures to build better lives. Yeah, I think he'd like that. She smiled for first time since we met. Transformed her face, made her look younger. Okay, deal. But one condition. What? Stay in touch. Let me know how business goes. Want to know this led to something good. Can do that. Shook hands across table, felt like I'd made connection mattering more than money. Someone understanding possessions are just objects until they represent something larger. Someone knowing real inheritance isn't what you receive, but what you do with it. Next 3 weeks carefully authenticating and selling Thomas Hayes's collection. Audemars Piguet Royal Oak to Los Angeles collector $42,000. Vacheron Constantin at auction $18,000. Jaeger LeCoultre and Rolex Daytona together $31,000. Coins to dealer $7,800. Total $98,800. After fees, shipping, insurance netted $92,000. Emma's 70% $64,400. My 30% $27,600. Sent Emma her portion via wire, called to confirm receipt. It's there, she said, wonder in voice. Just stared at bank account, 10 minutes. More money than I've ever had at once. What will you do with it? Don't know yet. Thinking about taking a year off. Maybe traveling, maybe volunteering somewhere. Maybe just figuring out who I am when not defined by what my father wasn't. Paused. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. Thank you for trusting me. After hanging up, sat in room looking at own bank account. With $27,600 from Thomas Hayes's collection plus what I'd saved, just over $46,000. $46,000 at 17 years old. But number didn't give expected feeling. Not triumph or satisfaction or relief. Just quiet sense of responsibility. This money represented choices, paths, chance to build or waste something. Thought about Carl, and impulse to find him hit hard. Not to reconnect or seek forgiveness. To prove something. Show him the kid he threw away had become someone who mattered. Found him 3 days later at same bar he always frequented. 2 p.m. Tuesday, already on second beer, looking older and more worn than I remembered from 4 months ago. Walked to his table. He looked at me without recognition momentarily. Then eyes widened. Marcus? Carl. He gestured to empty chair. Want to sit? No, not staying, just wanted to give you this. Pulled out envelope with $2,000 in cash. Covers 8 months after Mom died that you let me stay. We're even now. He opened envelope, stared at money. Where did you get this? Earned it, legitimately. Been working, building something. Making it work. Paused. Not here for apology or relationship. Just needed you to know I didn't need you. Never did. Mom needed you and you failed her. I needed you and you threw me out, but made it anyway. Going to keep making it without you. His face went red. Shame or anger, couldn't tell. Marcus, doesn't matter. Whatever you were going to say doesn't matter. You made your choice. I'm making mine. We're done. Walked out without looking back. Felt something release in chest tension I'd been carrying since that October night when door clicked shut behind me. Didn't need his approval, didn't need his regret, just needed to know I'd become someone who could stand on his own. 6 months later, stood in front of Unit 247 at storage facility in Industrial District. April, almost a year since Carl kicked me out. Unit up for auction, tracked it down specifically because of number. 247, second number in mother's notebook. Bidding started at 100. Let it climb watching other bidders evaluating interest. At 400 most dropped. At 500 just me and man I'd seen at dozens of auctions. 600, I said. He looked at unit at me, shrugged and walked away. Paid and got key. Felt familiar thrill of possibility. What would I find another collection more treasures? Or just valuable lesson that sometimes numbers are just numbers. Spent afternoons sorting through Unit 247, full of office furniture and file boxes. Residue of failed business. Nothing valuable in traditional sense. No watches or cameras or collectibles. But in one file box found something unexpected. Business plan for vintage resale shop. Carefully typed and bound dated 2006. Someone's dream put on paper never realized. Margins filled with handwritten notes about items to seek markets to target inventory strategies. Like finding blueprint for exactly what I was already building. Took business plan back to my apartment, no longer single room at Dorothy's, but one bedroom with proper kitchen and space for inventory. Read through that night, comparing their strategies to mine, learning from ideas, seeing parallels and differences. Whoever wrote this understood vintage resale deeply, identified same opportunities I'd found, planned for same challenges. But somewhere along the way, business failed. Inventory ended in storage unit, dream abandoned. Wondered what happened. Bad timing, lack of capital, personal circumstances. No way to know, but learn something from anonymous failure. Having knowledge wasn't enough. Having plan wasn't enough. Execution mattered. Persistence mattered. Ability to adapt when things didn't go according to plan. I'd been lucky so far. Lucky to find those first watches. Lucky to meet Harold. Lucky to make smart choices when I could have made terrible ones. But luck only lasted so long. At some point needed to transition from lucky to skilled, from surviving to thriving. Enrolled in community college classes for fall semester. Business management, accounting, marketing. Got GED in February, scoring high enough counselor said I could get into four-year university. But wasn't ready yet. Needed to learn while doing building business, while building education. Harold promoted me to assistant manager at Heritage Pawn. Raised to 15 an hour more responsibilities. Work 30 hours weekly at shop, another 20 on storage auction business, formally registered as Reeves Resale with county clerk. By summer, averaging 3,000 to 4,000 monthly profit from storage units. Not enough to quit Heritage, but enough to prove the model worked. Enough to keep building. Stayed in touch with Emma Hayes. Talked every few weeks. She'd taken sabbatical from teaching, spent 3 months volunteering at school in Guatemala. Came back changed, she said. Lighter. Like finally stopped carrying father's failures as her burden. She asked about business. I told her about units bought and items found and lessons learned. She listened like it mattered, like my small successes were worth celebrating. Your mother would be proud, she said during one call. I think so. Hope so. She left you those numbers for reason. Not because she knew what was in those units, but because she knew you'd be curious enough to look, smart enough to figure it out, brave enough to take risk. Thought about that a lot. What my mother had known, what she'd hoped for, whether numbers were truly intentional or random scribblings I'd assigned meaning because I needed to believe in something. In the end, didn't matter. Numbers had led me somewhere. Whether destiny or coincidence, or my own determination finding patterns in chaos, result was same. I'd built life from nothing. Turned $30 into $46,000. Gone from homeless to owner of my own future. 1 year after Carl threw me out, stood in an apartment on Saturday morning in October and took inventory of life. 51,000 in savings and investments. Business growing steadily. Job. I enjoyed working for man I respected. Education in progress. Place to live mine by choice, not circumstance. I'd bought and sold 43 storage units in past year. Some winners, some losers, most somewhere between. Learned to evaluate quickly. Bid strategically, cut losses without emotion. Learned which items held value and which were worth passing. learned difference between treasure and trash, and more importantly, that difference wasn't always obvious from outside. Third number in Mother's notebook, 319, was still out there. Been watching for Unit 319 at every facility, waiting for it to come up. Maybe it would someday. Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe numbers really were random and I'd found meaning by accident. But I kept looking because search itself had become part of who I was. Someone who looked for value where others saw nothing. Someone who believed treasure could hide in most unlikely places if you were willing to do the work of finding it. Pulled out Mother's notebook, leather soft and worn from being carried in pocket every day for past year. Opened a page with numbers, stared at them like I had 100 times before. 114, 247, 319. Then on impulse flipped to blank page near back. Started writing my own entry. Dear Mom, it's been a year since everything fell apart. Since Carl kicked me out and I ended up at bus station with nothing but your notebook and $30. Don't know if you meant for numbers to lead where they did. Don't know if you had grand plan or if I'm just seeing patterns because needed to believe you left me a map. But either way, it worked. Followed numbers and found watches and sold them and learned and built something. I'm not rich, but I'm okay. Better than okay. Building life that's mine. Becoming someone I think you'd recognize. Someone who doesn't quit. Someone who looks for value in unexpected places. Someone who understands real treasure isn't what you find, but who you become while searching for it. Miss you every day, but going to be okay. Better than okay, promise. Closed notebook put back in pocket. Felt Mother's presence like hand on shoulder. Not protecting, not solving problems. Just reminding me I came from someone who'd been strong, who fought through own struggles, who loved me enough to leave clues even if she didn't know exactly where they'd lead. Next storage auction was Tuesday. Had research done, budget set, strategy plan. Ready. Whatever I found, treasure or trash or something between, knew I'd handle it. Because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. Treasure isn't in storage units, not in watches or cameras or coins. Treasure is in person you become when you refuse to give up. When you take what little you have and turn it into something more. When you look at locked box and see possibility instead of impossibility. I was Marcus Reeves, 18 years old, had $51,000 in future. I was building one unit at a time, and I was just getting started.